Hey everyone, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation, back with another coach video cast slash podcast. Getting ready for the fall of 2022, entering the 2023 season. And our talks from here on out over the course of this year will be really focused on what we're calling our anti-vanilla vision of the future. And as a recap, which I'll be kind of giving to you on the regular here, is that endurance athletics has changed. Not that the sport has changed so much, you've changed as an athlete, but a couple external factors have changed. Number one, time. We just don't have the time anymore. Thanks to the internet, this magical device bringing me to you right now. Work can find you anywhere. Time is severely constrained, and the smartest people on the planet are dedicating their time and dollars to making sure that you don't spend time by yourself doing things like, I don't know, exercising or living your best endurance lifestyle. And so we're fighting a losing battle against this, right? Endurance Nation has adapted to that for you by creating the highest return on investment training programs that exist out there for endurance athletes, making sure that every minute you spend training is directed directly towards your goals, keeping you on track to be successful, and surrounding you by like-minded people. Hey, look in the background here for those of you paying attention on the Facebook channels and on YouTube, to connect with people who share the same values you do and make sure that you stay on track, make sure that you are held accountable, and that you do, in fact, take the steps that you need to take to move forward. But the second and most important axis is that the tools the majority of people use, folks just like you and I, aren't the same in terms of efficacy anymore. They're just not as useful. We used to set up annual training plans. I know, I was there. I was a Joe Friel trained coach. We'd map out an entire season. We spend over a week mapping out a whole season. These days, our lives are so variable on the micro scale here at home, my life, my kids, but on the macro scale as well. Global health, pandemics affecting our races, our schedules. That type of big term planning and slow to respond structures just don't work for endurance athletes anymore. Yes, we're steady, we don't slow down, we're consistent, but we still need support, and we need a dynamic version of training and support that makes sure you're successful. That's where Endurance Nation comes in with our season roadmap approach, which takes blocks of training, puts you in charge of choosing the training plans that fit those blocks, and supports you online 24/7, not only as coaching staff, but also as a community of athletes who are using the same resources you are, who've walked the same steps that you've walked already, or who are perhaps even walking the same steps to the same race you're doing now. So if you want to break out of the mold, you want to solve this time problem with the right training plan, you'd want to avoid doing it alone for the best possible outcomes, EnduranceNation.us is where it's at. And our winter training program kicks off on October 31st. Totally ominous. Put down that Halloween candy. In fact, don't even pick it up because we'll be working with you this season. All right, enough with the sales pitch. On to today's topic, which is the end of summer transition for endurance athletes. Summertime is an interesting time inside the endurance space. It's where the bulk of our races fall. And just as importantly, we have the bulk of our best races, right? So early spring races are fun, but most athletes are still just getting ready to be successful. They're not actually really successful because they got to kind of shake out the cobwebs, relearn the key things that they forgot from last year. How do they ultimately get to a successful place? It's really a function of repetition and time spent either training and or racing or some combination thereof. When we think about that, then summertime is that sweet spot where we have success. But on a similar level, we have some of the most hardcore conditions we have for endurance events. Don't get me wrong. I hate being cold, but I perform well in the cold. I just don't perform well in the heat as much as I like the sunshine, keeping me happy on my racing and long training days. And this summer was really an outlier in terms of the effects of the heat and what it meant for endurance athletes on race day and in training as well. And that double whammy of temperatures combined with this desire to improve across the course of the summer, as we normally do, made the summer of 2022 particularly challenging. Yes, we were back. Pandemic was off in terms of outdoor events, and many of them went off without a hitch. Great to see people out there racing and connecting again, and seeing the photos roll in and the great team mojo. But at the same time, it wasn't exactly the way that we would normally think about how summer races would go. But irrespective of that, it's important that we capture what happened during the summer so we can get our lessons learned, and then we can point towards our fall and be successful. Following that same structure of our roadmaps for Endurance Nation, where we break up your season into manageable chunks that you can not only set goals for, but execute against and find yourself being successful. And we stack these steps in front of one another. So too do we go backwards and recap incremental steps of your year. We break it up into 4 quarters so you can be successful by capturing these most recent lessons learned and putting them to work right now. The average endurance athlete really thinks about time on a macro scale in terms of a season. I'm starting now. My race is in August. I go from January to August. My season is done. Let me think about how things went in August. That's great, but that falls into that vanilla style. And remember, we are anti-vanilla. Why wait a whole season to have that reflection that what you're doing isn't working? Why not step in earlier and make the changes based off of not only best practices, but also the work that you're doing to make sure that you are successful? It's very easy to get into a place where you feel as though the changes that you may or may not make won't really have an impact. But truth be told, even in endurance sports, very small changes can have a huge impact on your overall performance. And more often than not, it's the small changes that you don't really even think are that big. So if we sat down and said, what's the biggest thing you can do to improve your changes, your performance? And you say, lose 20 pounds. We can't just lose 20 pounds overnight. And so what that means is that's a process that we go through. There's probably some smaller changes if we break that problem of body composition down into certain elements, what you eat, when you eat, how you work out, the timing of your working out. We can structure those elements in such a way that we can set you up to be successful, and we can do it in a way that honestly, 1 or 2 of those smaller changes are really going to be what unlocks your performance. Okay. So recap time. There's 3 key things we want you to think about as we exit summer and head into the fall. Number 1, the volume versus intensity decision. Coming out of your summer season and looking ahead at your fall, you may or may not have a race on the schedule, but regardless, we have to decide what we're going to do with your training. Are we going to go with more of a volume-oriented approach, take advantage of the cooler weather, or we're going with the intensity approach? We're trying to get ready for a key race. We're trying to make sure that we're set up for success. Either way, we want to make sure that what we're doing is really either complementary to building on top of what happened in the summer, in the case of a race, or oppositional in the case of a non-race, where we say, hey, I did a bunch of this type of work in the summertime. I want to do different work now to continue my training stimulus and adaptation over time. And so really thinking a little bit about those 2 elements. 1, do you or do you not have a race in the near future? And number 2, what did you really spend time doing in the summer months? And so if you did a fair amount of volume in the summer months, let's just say that, for example, your summer schedule is very user-friendly and amenable to you doing what you want, then you probably did more volume than otherwise. If you really were affected by the heat or you're super busy in the summer, you probably stuck with intensity as a modality. As a result, we would likely invert that heading into the season. For those of you who are doing, building your endurance base, but don't have a race very soon. Unless, of course, you couldn't really train during the summer, but you do have a race coming soon, then, well, hey, guess what? We need to head to your coaching space. You and I need to have a conversation about how things are going to play out. We don't want you winging this one for sure. Okay. So really think about that, the volume versus intensity side. Heading into the fall, it is cooler, but we do have an opportunity to do volume. We'll be talking more about that in our next video. But at the same time, if you are looking to get sharp or too sharpened, or you're coming off of a block of already doing some volume, then we absolutely want to change things up for you and take advantage of intensity to change the training stimulus and also give you more time to rest. Okay. So really step back and think about that, because that's an important decision. Will affect all the things you're going to be doing downstream. Number 2, capture those heat lessons learned. Training in the summer is tough because of the heat. This summer, doubly more so, perhaps. Sure as heck felt like it, even though the dial didn't say it was that hot. Well, what were those lessons learned? What did you learn about hydration? What did you learn about pacing? What did you learn about your performance, your equipment? All of those elements can still be incorporated in your regular training, even in the cooler weather in the fall, because it gives you the opportunity to bring some of those more extreme level examples and dial them back to spaces where they can have everyday impact. Think about I have no idea, like an invention, like something like Gore-Tex. People originally used Gore-Tex simply for, hiking or extreme adventures and the equipment associated with that, because it's very durable. It could be waterproof. It could also keep some warmth in, really make you resilient in the most extreme of conditions. But these days, Gore-Tex is almost in every type of garment that's got some flavor of performance with it. In fact, heck, it's even in my bathroom, not because I keep a jacket in my bathroom, but the floss that I use, Glide floss, is actually made with Gore-Tex. And so some of these extreme products actually trickle down and make their way into everyday lives. And similarly, we want that high level performance-oriented experience that you had in terms of managing heat and making good decisions about pacing and nutrition, we want to have that also trickle into the rest of your season. There's no reason to defer the value of the lessons you've learned until next year or until the next time it gets hot. You still learned a ton about your body, and it was when the Dow was set to 11. So even if it's at 7, you can still use those lessons learned. And in fact, you may actually even have better results simply because you aren't facing the conditions of an 11 day, right? All right, last piece of the puzzle here with the summertime transition. What is the status of your beach body? Now, I joke, of course. I certainly, as many of you will probably know, don't have any kind of a beach body whatsoever, although my body has been on a beach many times. No confusion there. But we do want to think a little bit about your body composition situation and where you're at. For many people, the summertime with racing and then also just your social desires fit into a space where you actually want to lean out and be super fit for the summertime. Well, what does that mean for your fall? Is this something that we want to carry sustainably into the fall and maintain this body composition? If so, what decisions do we need to make to kind of keep this on autopilot without working too hard? We don't want it to be too much work. Inversely, if summertime was less about the focus and more about bringing beverages to the beach with like snacks and marshmallows for s'mores at bonfires at night, then perhaps there is some body composition changes that you do want to make. So really check in on that body composition status and say, hey, what sliders do I want to move right now? What's helpful? I know in some cases being far enough away from your race makes you feel as though improving body composition isn't really that relevant right now. But truth be told, off-season body composition changes have a higher likelihood of being successful because we don't have the competing demand on our bodies from the workouts and the short periods of recovery between them. The key part about the wintertime, of course, is that there's less healthy food around because we're not exercising as much. And it's really easy to kind of opt into something super yummy as opposed to something that may be more relevant or aligned with your goals. So we want to check on those 3 things for you. 1, make that volume versus intensity decision based off of what you did this summer, but also the proximity of your next race. Number 2, let's capture those heat lessons learned and let's put them to work right away. What did you learn? Capture it, write it down, and let's put it to work right away. And then last but not least, that beach body status, just kidding, body composition status. Where are you at? Where do you want to be? What's the delta? And what can we do to either sustain that continued trajectory to the place where you want to be so you enter that way next year? Or if the need so arises, how do we give you a healthy break from that focus on nutrition, give you some wiggle room to relax that and just be you, and then know when to bring you back. All of that super important to make sure that we keep you on track, we keep you engaged, and you're healthy from a long-term perspective, not just making short-term decisions because you want to lose a few pounds for the next race. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Coach Patrick from Endurance Nation with another check-in episode. This week, we talked a little bit about the end of summer transition for endurance athletes. Next week, I'm talking about the value of fall volume, which will be super exciting. Be sure to tune in for that as well. Otherwise, thanks so much. Hope to see you inside EnduranceNation.us soon. Whatever your race or adventure may be, do know that we have people on the team who have not only likely done it, but actually done it really well. They've captured all the information and they share it back with all of us inside here. Why wouldn't you join to be a part of this community? Get your learning on, become a smarter, faster athlete today. Thanks, folks. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.